This is M-Wire, Movie Week in Review. M-Wire is brought to you by Audible.com. Sign up today to get a free audiobook download at www.audibletrial.com/geekcastradio. Start today with a free 30-day trial with over 100,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Don't forget to follow Audible on Twitter at audible_com. And now the latest and greatest in movies with M-Wire.
Hi, I'm Seth MacFarlane. Ask your kids. And I'll be hosting the Academy Awards. Ask your parents.
The Oscars, live Oscar Sunday, February 24th on ABC.
Hello and welcome to M-Wire Movie Week in Review, brought to you by the Geekcaster Radio Network. I am one of your hosts, TFJ and Mike, and joining me is Movie Roll Dan. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, but can we go back to talking about Airborne, please? Oh boy. Airborne, Basic Instinct, something. Or can we move on to Speed in the 90s flashback? Holy crap, because tonight, or today, or whenever the hell you people find people listening to this, for the first time ever on M-Wire, we will be talking about this quote-unquote ceremony of the Oscars. Brief history, a rant, and predictions for the 2013 Oscars. First of all, I'm not going to get into my rant yet, but in 2012, 2013, in this day and age, the award shows mean absolutely nothing to me. I get that it's celebrating how well a film did, specifically to the Oscars. I understand that. That's great. That's all well and good. But my biggest gripe, even as a kid watching the Oscars, was there was films there that I just didn't know. You know, you look at, is it Naked Gun 1 or is it 2? I forget. One of the Naked Gun movies makes fun of the Oscars, and Sawdust and Mildew wins, or, you know, and it's like, I just don't get why these 162-year-olds that run the Academy just can't nominate decent stuff, or stuff that today's generation would know. I don't know. Take it away with the history before I start ranting.
Okay. Well, I mean, we'll get into that in a little bit, but just kind of a brief history. I mean, the one thing the Oscars has going is that it is basically the oldest of all the award shows. It kind of started it off way back in 1929, and it's come a long way since then. I mean, the first award show had about 270 people. The awards were announced a few months ahead of time, so people knew who was gonna win. That, you know, they have evolved, they have changed. I mean, 1929 was a lot different for movies. They weren't what they are today, but they've garnered more and more and a higher reputation. The first film ever to win Best Picture in 1929, as many know, was Wings, which was the first silent film and the only silent film until last year when The Artist won. Over the years, like, different awards have changed, like names of awards. We've seen that the amount of Best Picture nominees have altered. It started with 5, then it went to 10, then it went back to 5, and then a few years ago we went back up to 10, and then now we have a new format where it can be anywhere up to from 5 to 10 picture nominees, depending. And this year we had 9, and we can have as many as 5, or I'm sorry, as few as 5 or as many as 10. And they've kind of changed it different ways for different reasons. You know, the big reason why people point to that was changed in 2009 was because in 2008 The Dark Knight wasn't nominated, and felt that they didn't have room for genre films, so they upped it to 10. And in 2009 we ended up getting District 9 and Avatar were both nominated for Best Picture. So it was successful, but as we have seen as time has gone on, what really has been happening is the genre films aren't really getting nominated. It's the small independent films that are now becoming nominees, like this year, Beast of the Southern Wild, Winter's Bone a few years ago. The smaller films that previously never really had a chance are now kind of having that opportunity to kind of boost careers. Like Jennifer Lawrence, for example, who's a huge star now, a big reason was because of Winter's Bone, and a lot of that had to do with her Oscar nomination, and we've seen Oscar winners like Cuba Gooding Jr. win, and then nothing ever happened. People like Forrest Whitaker win, and then his career kind of go nowhere. So it's the Oscar doesn't necessarily mean a great career is ahead of you. Sometimes it's like the last thing anyone's ever known for, and then some people are known for never winning Oscars. Paul Newman, one of the greatest actors of all time, didn't win until The Color of Money, which was a role he first played in The Hustler nearly 30 years prior to that. So the Oscars don't always get it right. But my argument to that would be, I like the Oscars. I like what they stand for. I don't always agree with them. I don't like how their academy is set up. And like Mike mentioned, it is very heavily dominated by old, whiter men. There was a study done a few years ago where the vast majority are white men over the age of 65. And you wonder, is that really a great representation for the movies of today? And that's when we get things that shouldn't be nominated, because they kind of, that Oscar bait. We know that term, Oscar bait, and Oscar bait is a negative term. So it's weird to appeal to the Oscars is usually looked down upon, which is kind of showing you the way people view the Oscars. It's interesting because general audiences, like Mike mentioned, when the Oscars come on, they tend to not know a lot of the films. And then when you look at the more cinephile crowd, they think the Oscars are too mainstream, and they don't honor and don't recognize the smaller films enough. So the kind of Oscars are really great at pissing off everyone. So that's their one positive. But this year, and one thing that should also be mentioned is who does vote. Well, the Academy is made up of a variety of different people. You can get nominated a few ways, or you can enter the Academy in a few ways. If you've ever been nominated for an Oscar, you're then entered into the Academy, and you have the opportunity to vote. Or the the Academy can also choose certain people that they feel are eligible, and they can get voted in. People that are well known in the movie community, like critics or producers, basically people who have had a large influence on movies. There's some interesting people that aren't in the Academy, like Woody Allen. Apparently, the rumor is that he's not in the Academy. He's very against the Oscars. Like, he was nominated last year, didn't even show up. There's been a lot of great historical movie makers that are not fans of the Oscars. Charlie Chaplin, even way back when, he was very outspoken against the Oscars. So they've had this history of, not really appeasing to many movie fans. So, but yeah, but basically, go ahead.
It's just so stupid, okay? Okay, I understand tradition. I get that. It's the 85th annual whatever, however many, longest running whatever. But you would think, in this day and age, that they would... I can't believe I'm going to make this analogy, and a lot of people are probably going to crucify me for it. The Oscars, to me now, are like watching an episode of World's Dumbest on True TV, where you have these C and D list comedians commenting on the dumbest stunts or scenarios or whatever. That's honestly what the ceremony to me, as far as like the presentation, as far as like how, oh, this was nominated, or oh, this was voted. The Oscars and the MMPA need to get together and have a conversation because not a lot of stuff is known about this stuff. And you found an article, and we'll have it in the show notes, saying that someone at the LA Times found out a few facts about the Oscars. Median age of Academy voters, 62. I'm sorry, in this day and age, a 62-year-old male, female, whatever, no. You need any people from, I would say, 25 to 50. Somewhere in that, especially if you're like nominating and voting on films that have come out in the previous year, you need someone that's gonna be, hey, this film is really good. One of my main gripes, and someone pointed this out to me on Facebook, and it's become my gripe, is Clark Gregg did not get nominated Not even nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Avengers. The genre films get so shit on with this award show to the fact of, oh hey, The Dark Knight can win for music, or The Dark Knight can win for cinematography. Don't get me wrong, cinematography and music are all well and good. They play in a part of any film. I fully respect that. I'm not saying that The Dark Knight is bad. I would never say that. What I'm saying is the genre films end up in the lower non. It's kind of like the Spike VGAs. Was it last year when the Spike VGAs basically just shit on video game voice actors. Just said, hey, here's who won the best male of the year, video game voice. Didn't even have a presentation, didn't even have anything. I cannot stand that. Voters younger than 50 make up 14% of the Academy. That's so wrong. 77% are male, 23% are female. 94% are Caucasian, 2% are African American, less than 2% are Latino. Caucasians make up more than 90% of every branch except actors, which are 88% white. Notable members: Tom Hanks, Sidney Poitier, Meryl Streep, Steven Spielberg, blah blah blah. Notable non-members, the one that Dan didn't mention, is George Lucas himself. Well, of course George Lucas isn't going to join the Academy. How many films has he put out in his 40-year, 50-year career? 8, 9, you know? George has always been, at least from what I've seen of him in interviews and heard about him, is that he is that true independent filmmaker that he makes. And I'm not saying that, oh, he's not a big budget director or filmmaker. He solely is. I mean, hello, Star Wars. But George Lucas, as far as his directing films, not producing, not any of those other, just as a director or as a owner of a franchise, to me, he has a very small body of work, and there's nothing wrong with that. But of course he's not going to join this big, gigantic cult of stuff.
Yeah, well,
go ahead.
He would be, since Star Wars, American Graffiti, since those were nominated, he technically would automatically be eligible. I believe he turned down his. He decided not to be in the Academy for whatever reason. But what you're getting about regarding the diversity of the Academy, yeah, that is inexcusable to have an Academy that's supposed to be a representation of the industry be so heavily white and old. It's kind of unacceptable. I mean, that's kind of a big reason why, like, we've only had one woman director ever win for Best Director, and Catherine Bigelow, and it only happened a few years ago. And then we've only had very few African Americans or minorities of any sort win for Best Actor or Best Actress. I mean, we've had Denzel Washington, Halle Berry, and last year we had some as well. But that is a huge issue that I think they need to correct. And I think in some ways they are. And I understand what you're saying regarding genre films, and I do think they don't honor genre films nearly as much as they should, but I don't think that they never do. Because there have been occasions when a genre film has kind of exceeded the normal expectations we have. Things like Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jaws, Exorcist, District 9, even Avatar. Say what you want, but they at least saw some innovation there. But then
okay, but that's how many films? That's what 6 films you just listed in 85 years.
Well, there's more than that, but I also
but that's part of my problem here. Is that the thing? And I'm sorry to cut you off, man, but they need something for today's age. They need voters that are going to vote on films that people will have actually seen. A lot of the independent films, the mainstream, which I'm pretty much mainstream. I don't, unless someone turns me on to something or shows me something that they think I might enjoy, I don't pay attention to independent films. I don't pay attention to small projects. I think that's great. Independent filmmakers, can go off and make their picture, and if it, makes money and wins award, that's all well and good. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Hell, look at us at the Geekcast Radio Network. Technically, we are independent, content producers, etc. That's all well and good. But something like today's age, look at 2012. We had Avengers, The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah,
You mean to tell me at least one of those two wouldn't at least, I don't care if they win. I'm not saying they need to win. I'm not saying that at all. For Best Picture, you mean to tell me that they couldn't have nominated one of those two films? That's just BS to me.
for this year, honestly, no. I mean, I love both of those movies, but I don't think any of those deserve to be nominated for Best Picture. And when you say like, I think the fact that movies haven't been seen by people makes it better that they are nominated. An Oscar nomination for The Avengers doesn't really do anything. That movie made $1 billion. It's one of the highest movies ever. People have seen it. People know about it. Nominating it for an Oscar, it's not going to do anything. But you can do a lot for these small films that no one would ever see. Beast of the Southern Wild was made on a shoestring budget by one director with amateur actors, and I think putting it on this stage is a good thing. I enjoyed The Avengers a lot more than Beast of the Southern Wild, but I'd rather see Beast of the Southern Wild get nominated because that deserves attention. That The Avengers already has attention. It doesn't need an Oscar. But these smaller films.
No, and I'm not saying that Avengers needs an Oscar. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like, okay, look at the nomination list for Best Picture. You've got Life of Pi, Lincoln, Argo, Armor, Beast of the Southern Wild, Silver Linings Playbook, Zero Dark 30, Django Unchained, Les Mis. That's the Best Picture category. If you took out, first of all, why did Zero? Okay, I haven't seen Zero Dark 30 yet, but I know what it's about. Why did it even get nominated? Just because it documents, essentially that's a documentary film, even though it's not shot in the documentary style. It's technically a fictional documentary film on how we killed Osama.
Yeah, but honestly, Zero Dark 30 is an amazing movie that deserves to be nominated. It has a great performance by Jessica Chastain. Even Ryan Clark, who's in that for the beginning, and that final hour of that movie is some of the best directing I've seen in years. Like I would honestly, I didn't feel like I thought 2012 was a great year for film. I didn't think I saw a masterpiece or like anything I would consider that level until I saw Zero Dark 30. Like if I was going to pick Best Picture, I think if it wasn't for the political aspects that Zero Dark 30 caused, because a lot of people felt it was pro-torture, which is ridiculous, but that's besides the point. Zero Dark 30 would be winning this year. It's far above everything else that's on that list. If you're going to take anything out, like the thing that bugs me the most about the Best Picture class this year, though it's one of the strongest in recent memory, is that there's only 9 nominees. And I think, yeah, there is room for 10. Like I actually would have probably nominated Skyfall above The Avengers or Dark Knight Rises because it was a better made film. I think
even that, and that's my point. You would put, if you were voting, you would vote for a Skyfall nomination for Best Picture. I'm not saying that the nominations. Yes, I agree with you. Avengers made $1 billion. Everybody knows about it. Whatever else, but it would be nice to see that the Academy is taking interest in geek culture. I mean, I know geek culture hasn't overwhelmed the planet yet. It probably never will. It's still kind of, even though it's more in the mainstream now, but it's still kind of that very dim spotlight. But it's like, something. It doesn't have to be an Avengers. It doesn't have to be a Dark Knight Rises. Just something that everyone in their right mind has seen. And it would have been nice for me to see something, whether it be Skyfall, whether it be whatever, on the nominations list. That I would actually, the only movie that I'm really rooting for on the Best Picture list is Lincoln. I don't think it's going to win, but it's the only one I'm really rooting for. That's my beef with the Oscars, is that they don't nominate stuff that more people than just a select few have seen. And I get what you're saying about, nominate this independent filmmakers thing to get them more exposure. I thought the Oscars was supposed to be, oh, hey, this is the best.
And I agree. I think that's what they. I don't think they always do that, but I'm not saying that they shouldn't. You should never nominate based upon an agenda. Like, I want to nominate this movie because I feel I'm going to put this as number one. I think it's really number five, but I want it to get nominated because I want it to get more attention. I'm not saying doing that. I'm just saying I'd rather see that effect than trying to pick out films, try to placate to general audiences. Because when the Oscars tries to do that, they fail miserably because they get people like James Franco and Anne Hathaway to host the Oscars, and it leads to absolute disaster. So
right, but that's what I'm saying. That's why I think that the voters of the Academy, the people that actually vote on what gets nominated and what wins, we need a younger generation. We don't need old men and old women in those voting polls.
Yeah, I don't deny that they need to diversify their voting pool a great deal. But I guess the argument against that would be we've seen like the idea is that when you're in the Academy, typically you're in the Academy for life. I think you can get voted out, but it's a difficult process. And we've seen young filmmakers that kind of go on and go in obscurity, and then the idea is like, well, how do you know how do you know someone's going to be successful? Like, how do you think you typically need a really strong body of work, and it's kind of like getting voted for, the Chief Justice or something of that nature. I don't think, like, I could see why they're hesitant just to nominate someone and try to just raise their pool of young voters as quickly as possible. But I do think they are trying to make changes. I mean, this is the first year that they went to online voting, and I think when we go to the nominees, there's this year, like you say, no one's seen these films, but actually this year the nominees this year actually are very financially successful. Life of Pi, notwithstanding Les Mis, was very successful. Django Unchained, over $100 million. Lincoln, over $100 million.
Right.
Zero
No,
Dark
no, no.
Thirty.
I'm talking about those small, like what you were saying earlier, the small independent, like Beasts of the Southern Wild. Until I saw it listed in the nominations, I had never heard of it.
Yeah, and
that's when I've heard of Lincoln, I've heard of I've heard of all of the films other than Armour and Beasts of the Southern Wild. Those are the only two on the Best Picture list that I know nothing about.
And I think most years, like last year, there was a few films that I questioned that shouldn't be nominated. This year, I don't honestly see one. I don't see there's one I can point to and say this one didn't deserve a nomination. There's ones that I think, like, I probably wanted to nominate myself for things I would have put in there, or films that should have been nominated that weren't, like The Master or even Skyfall. I think Skyfall deserved a nomination. I thought it was going to get it because it got a PGA, but it ended up not getting a nomination. But yeah, I don't disagree that they could do more and nominate genre films, even if it's not in the Best Picture category, even like the Best Director category, because it doesn't do enough to respect how hard it is to direct a great action film. Like the great action directors of the 1980s, like McTiernan, like they are not respected by the Academy like they should be because they don't view that as, like you mentioned, as good as like someone like what Michael Haneke does with a Moore. And I think that's unfair because to direct a really great action movie is very difficult because we see a lot of horrible action movies. The other thing is comedy. Comedy is criminally underlooked by the Academy. There are very few times that a comedic performance is nominated. There's been a few in recent memory. Robert Downey Jr. for Tropic Thunder, Melissa McCarthy for Bridesmaids, but most often than not, they're not nominated. I mean, comedies are very rarely nominated for Best Picture. I mean, or when, I think occasionally that happens, but not very often. And I think that those are the two areas you talked about genre. I would think the biggest one would be comedy because it's not respected enough as it should be. And I think it's unfair because every year we have a great genre or great dramatic film. We don't always have a great comedy. There are very few great comedies out there. And I kind of wouldn't even mind if the Academy did what the Golden Globes does and has a separate category just for comedy and musicals, or at least try to do more to nominate them. Besides,
Not just ignore it, yeah.
Or just not give them the technical awards, or to do something. And I do agree that there isn't enough done for genre films because, like we mentioned in 2008, Dark Knight deserved to be nominated, but I don't agree that they always ignore them. The thing is, though, it's a hard game to play because when you're voting, when you look at any time you're voting for something, you look at any award show, you look at anything, like even like sports. So you look, like it's a perfect example. You have something like the Pro Bowl or the All-Star game, and they suffer from the same issues that the Oscars suffer from. You have people who are nominated because they had like it was like a surprise, and they kind of people overrate something because they weren't expecting it, or you have those people who've been around forever, so they're just used to being nominated or being picked, so they ended up they throw nominations like Meryl Streep. If she's in a movie, she's gonna get a nomination. There's those people the Academy loves, and they always nominate them. Like, we'll get to them this year, but one that comes to mind was Alan Arkin in Argo. I thought he was fine. I thought he was good. He played Alan Arkin. He didn't deserve a nomination, but the Academy loves Alan Arkin. So
I already kind of went over Best Picture, but we'll go over that again in a second. But again, that's one of the things. Another thing that I find very highly suspect of the way the Oscar voting goes, because as soon as you find out who isn't showing up, you know someone else won the damn award. I've noticed. I've gone back and I've watched. I remember watching any, and it's not just the Oscars. It's any of these award shows. You go back and you find and watch, like say, say Denzel, Snipes, Ryan Reynolds, and Harrison Ford are nominated in Best Actor. I'm not saying that Ryan Reynolds is the best actor. I'd never say that, but there's just one name that came into my mind. If Harrison doesn't show up, you know he didn't win. If Denzel didn't show up, you know he didn't. It would be so like that's another thing that I hate about these award shows. They're so predictable.
yeah,
Because you can tell by the audience whoever isn't there didn't win.
sometimes I don't know if that's always the case. I mean, usually for the Oscars,
For the Oscars, but okay, I'm not saying it's the case for every award show, but for the Oscars, for me, it is that case almost every single time.
because the bad thing about the Oscars is usually you're right. Usually the winners are pretty well established because of all the award shows that have happened up to that point, like the SAGs and the Directors Guild Awards, the BAFTAs, the Golden Globes. So a lot of the times you kind of know who's going to win. But there are, like I watch a lot of the award shows, like the SAGs and the Golden Globes, and there are occasions where people who win that don't show up, like Tommy Lee Jones won this year for the SAG Awards, but he wasn't there. Maybe.
Oh.
So it does happen. I mean, you've had famous cases where, you've had people like Marlon Brando win, and then he sends up a Native American. He's not there. Instead of a Native American comes up and takes the award for him instead. There have been some famous cases, but yeah, usually that's the bad thing about the Oscars is the time we know who's going to win 90% of the time. And even this year, there are awards. Okay, you know who's going to win it because they've won everything up to this point. So
right.
Unfortunately, that's something the Oscars can't control. But I think they are kind of trying. I think what they did this year was they announced the nominees earlier than they ever did. Usually, the nominees didn't come out until after the Golden Globes were awarded, but they moved them up this year, and they did online voting. And I think that really put a lot of the onus on the younger voters, because I think a lot of the older voters probably didn't have the opportunity to see a lot of these movies because they're not going out to see them. They're just waiting for their screeners. So,
yeah.
And I think that there are certain films this year that got nominated, and we'll get to certain categories where you can tell like it goes against the grain for the Oscars. And there's certain years where you see a transition happen, and like 1967 is a perfect example where you had In the Heat of the Night, Bonnie and Clyde, The Graduate, Dr. Dolittle, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, all nominated. The films that were kind of anti-Oscar, like the films that Oscars didn't usually vote for, were The Graduate and Bonnie and Clyde. Those were very like new films, new school. When you had like Dr. Dolittle on the other side, and the film that ended up winning was In the Heat of the Night, which was kind of like in the middle. And that kind of led to the 1970s, which was this huge rebirth for directors taking control of films. And you kind of saw something like that in like 1991 when Silence of the Lambs won. And a horror film winning Best Picture, if you want to call Silence of the Lambs horror film, never happens. So that was a huge transition, and it happens every so often. And I think this year is a transition year. And I'll usually bag on the Oscars, but I feel this year for most of the categories, they got it right. It doesn't always happen, but there's omissions, but they got it as right as they ever have in recent memory.
Let me just clear the air on my ranting here to try to transition into when we talk about the nominees here. The rant that I have is more so about the general process. It is not about this year's show. It's more about the show overall in general. That's why I bag on the Oscars, because the process, as I've stated in the last 25 minutes of this podcast, it's just so asinine to me. It just is. I don't know. So let's recap for Best Picture. I already said them earlier. I'll recap again. You got Amour, Argo, Beasts of the Southern Wild, Django Unchained, Les Mis, Life of Pi, Lincoln, Silver Linings Playbook, and Zero Dark 30. My choice, if I was choosing a winner, would be Lincoln. The reason being is because Lincoln, as we all know, is one of a very few of our most historical presidents we've ever had in the history of this country. And the filmmaking and the acting in that movie was just so bang on. It was so great. And I'm saying the filmmaking, I'm not just saying it because it's a Steven Spielberg film. I'm just saying that when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, this needs to win. What is your choice for Best Picture?
I think the winner is probably going to be Argo, which I didn't think would happen a few months ago. I thought it was going to be Les Mis or even maybe Zero Dark 30, but the momentum is within on Argo's side. It just won the WGAs. It's won Golden Globes, and ever since then it's gone on a tangent. If I was going to pick, I'd probably say Zero Dark 30 deserves a nomination, but I'm pretty positive Argo is going to walk away with it.
Mm. All right, so actor in a leading role. You got Bradley Cooper for Silver Linings Playbook, Daniel Day-Lewis for Lincoln, Hugh Jackman for Les Mis, Joaquin Phoenix for The Master, and Denzel Washington for Flight. Outside of Lincoln, I have yet to see any of the other films. I've heard nothing but good things about Denzel in Flight. I do really want to see that movie. But if I had to choose, as far as just on acting, obviously I can't, because I gotta go with Lincoln again. I know he's not gonna win, but I gotta go with Daniel Day-Lewis, because that was just, it was like Abraham Lincoln was still with us, almost. That performance was just so, like, it took you back to the time when Lincoln was alive. It really did.
Yeah, and I actually 100% agree. I think of the picks I feel the most comfortable with, I think Daniel Day-Lewis is one of them. I feel bad because I think Hugh Jackman, I think in most years, could have walked away with it. I think if Les Mis came out last year, he probably is winning Best Actor. But Daniel Day-Lewis is a well-respected actor. He's playing one of a historical president, like you mentioned, and the performance is amazing. So I think it's hands down going to be Daniel Day-Lewis.
All right, so for actress in a leading role, we have Jessica Chastain in Zero Dark 30, Jennifer Lawrence in Silver Linings Playbook, Emmanuel Riva in Amour, the kid in Beast of the Southern Wild, no clue how to pronounce that name. I'm not even going to try. And Naomi Watts from The Impossible. What would be your pick? Because I really don't have one for this category.
I went with Jennifer Lawrence. It's really between her and Jessica Chastain. I think I went with Lawrence because I think she's been nominated, for Winter's Bone. Silver Linings Playbook seems to be a big hit with a lot of the actors in the Academy. So I think I went with her over Chastain, but it's between those two, and it's really splitting hairs. But Lawrence is winning all the awards up to this point. She won the SAG, she won the Golden Globes. So the safe choice is Jennifer Lawrence, but don't be surprised if there is an upset here.
Once again, actor in a supporting role. Again, I'm going to go back to my rant. Okay, I get Avengers wouldn't get nominated for Best Picture, but come on, Clark Gregg couldn't get a nomination for playing. Um, God, crap, what's his name? Phil from Avengers and the Marvel. Anyway, uh, so actor in a supporting role, you have Alan Arkin in Argo, Robert De Niro in Silver Linings Playbook, Philip Seymour Hoffman in The Master, Tommy Lee Jones in Lincoln, Christoph Waltz in Django Unchained. Choice for supporting role actor.
I went with Tommy Lee Jones. This is one of the hardest ones to pick. Everyone in this category this year has won an Oscar previously, which is the first time that's ever happened. Um, I went with Tommy Lee Jones just because he won the SAGs. I think him teaming up with Daniel Day-Lewis and his ability to kind of still stay a strong presence in that movie, even with Daniel Day-Lewis and how well they worked off one another. I think that will. I think a lot of the Academy voters will like that. He's also not have a really he hasn't had a really outstanding performance in a while, so I think seeing him kind of coming back and doing something great again helps his chances. If I was going to pick one, I think it probably would be either Christoph Waltz or Philip Seymour Hoffman because I really love their performances, but I think the winner is going to be Jones.
Yeah, I also agree. It's nice to see Tommy Lee Jones not being Agent K. For actress in a supporting role, we have Amy Adams in The Master, Sally Field in Lincoln, Anne Hathaway in Les Mis, Helen Hunt in The Sessions, and Jackie Weaver in Silver Linings Playbook. Choice?
It's Anne Hathaway, hands down. This is pretty much a lock, so she's winning this award, and I guarantee you she's still going to act surprised, even though everyone knows she's going to win. I love Anne Hathaway, but she's very, very humble, almost to the point of annoyance. But yeah, she's definitely winning this award.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next category we're going to talk about, Dan and I might have to come to blows on it because we may never podcast again after this. Best Animated Feature Film. The nominees are Brave, Fucking Weenie, Paracorman. I'm sorry. Brave, Frankenweenie, Paranorman, The Pirates, Band of Misfits, and Wreck-It Ralph. First of all, Pirates Band of Misfits, I've never seen it, but I've seen the trailer, and I know everybody's, he's judging it by the trailer, blah, 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 blah. What the hell ever. I'm sorry, that movie to me is one that could have been replaced with something else. I don't care what it is. It could have been replaced with Simon's Cat from YouTube. That movie just does not look like an Oscar. They probably threw that in just to throw everything else off. Brave, to me, I've seen it, and it's essentially an animated version of Braveheart, except it has the mother getting turned into an animal. I don't care for Brave at all. For me, I would pick Wreck-It Ralph. I know it's not going to win, sadly, but that would be my pick. I just don't think the horror stuff is going to win stuff, though. I don't think I don't care if it's Tim Burton. Tim Burton is not the best director ever. He just isn't.
I completely agree. He's not the best director.
Take a look at Batman Returns, please.
Take a look at Tim Burton in the last 15 years. That's pretty much it.
God, yes.
Except for maybe Big Fish, which was pretty good. But the reason I don't think Wreck-It Ralph is going to win is because, like we were mentioning, this is an old Academy pool, 65-year-old men. I don't see they're going to have a connection with a movie about video games from the 80s. I just don't see it happening. I don't think Brave's going to win because it's not to the caliber of a normal Pixar film. I don't see the Pirates Band of Misfits winning because it just wasn't that highly rated by a lot of people. I enjoyed that movie. Like, I wouldn't mind if maybe The Secret Ward of Ariadne or other films were nominated besides that. I think there are some better choices, like Mike mentioned. But I do think the winner is probably going to be Frankenweenie, just because it really was just a process elimination.
Yeah.
And it does kind of honor a lot of classic films, which the Academy tends to love. So that's why I went with Frankenweenie. But it might be Wreck-It Ralph. Who knows? Like that one, I'm not really sure of.
one of the reasons why I think it'll be Wreck-It Ralph, and I don't know. We're recording this. We're releasing it 3 days before the Oscars even airs, and sadly, because I want to see what wins, I'm gonna have to watch the stupid ceremony to see what wins for animated feature. The reason why I think Wreck-It Ralph is gonna win, it has nothing to do with the fact that it's paying homage to video games. Yay! It's Pong. It's Cubert. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the story that the film tells. That story was so amazing. If you look at that story, you look at the just all the psychological stuff that you got a guy stuck in a rut of a job, wants to change his life but doesn't know how. You've got a girl in Penelope. It's Penelope, right?
Yeah.
I should know this, but I don't. Yeah. You got a girl in Penelope who people are bullying her entire life, saying that she's just a glitch, she's just this, she's just that, blah 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 blah. And you've got these two characters meeting and teaching each other stuff. And that's why I think it's going to win. It's going to win because of the story. Sure, the animation is fabulous, fantastic, and great. The voice acting is great. The fact that it does homage classic video games is also great. But I really honestly think if it wins, it'll win because of the story. Look at Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3 won because of the emotional story it had. You know? That's my reasoning for picking Wreck-It Ralph for Best Animated Feature.
Yeah, and I mean, you make a good point, and I did like Wreck-It Ralph. I think, like I mentioned, I don't. This one is really up in the air. Usually, it's always been easy to pick the best animated film because you would just go with the Pixar movie, but this year I don't think it's gonna happen. I'd be really surprised if Brave won. If Wreck-It Ralph won, I would be completely okay with that. I would be kind of upset if Brave won, just because I don't think it would deserve it. Franken winning is okay. I didn't love that movie, but I could understand why. At least it's trying something different. But yeah, I don't disagree with what you said regarding Wreck-It Ralph. I think there is a great story there besides just all those homages and those callbacks to classic video games. I just wonder. I'm just thinking.
Will the Academy see that?
Yeah.
No, probably not.
Yeah, if they're going to be able to kind of look through everything else and see that story, and who knows? But maybe they'll surprise us. I don't know.
What's next for nominations?
The next up, we have cinematography. This is another weird category this year because I was really surprised that The Master wasn't even nominated. But those that were Seamus McGarvey for Anna Karenina, Robert Richardson for Django Unchained, Claudia Miranda for Life of Pi, Janice Krasinski for Lincoln, and Roger Deakins for Skyfall. Honestly, a lot of great choices there. The one I went with, more out of hope than actually knowing it's going to win, I went with Roger Deakins. He's been nominated multiple times. He's really well respected, maybe one of the most respected cinematographers today. So I'm hoping he could win. So I picked Roger Deakins.
Yeah, I pick him as well for Skyfall.
If there was going to be a possible upset there, or if you want to call it upset, it would probably be Life of Pi, because that also had really fantastic cinematography. Up next, we'll go through these pretty quickly because there's not really much to say, but the next one is costume design. Those nominated are Anna Karenina, Les Mis, Lincoln, Mirror Mirror. Yes, Mirror Mirror is an Oscar.
Oh my God, no! I just saw that. I didn't see it before. Holy crap! Hell no! Ugh.
And Snow White and the Huntsman. So both Snow White movies from last year have both been nominated for Oscars. I went with Anna Karenina. I could see Les Mis possibly winning. I just think the costumes in Anna Karenina are really bright and boisterous, and the type of costumes that tend to win these. Usually when it comes to costume design, the brightest tend to win, or the biggest in the so Les Mis' costumes are kind of they're more muted. They're not really like as bright and colorful. So I'm thinking they're gonna pick Anna Karenina.
You just said the biggest and the brightest costume wins. Julia Roberts and those fucking shoulder pads. Oh my God. If Mirror Mirror wins, I'm going to just plots myself. Holy crap, that's just so wrong. Okay, what's next?
Next is possibly the weirdest category in recent memory, and that's Best Director, just because of who's not nominated. With Tom Hooper Ben Affleck and Catherine Bigelow all not being nominated, which is strange because you would think those are three of the favorites to win this year, which I think is a big reason we're seeing that transition, because I think a lot of the younger voters kind of put in some of these nominees. Those that were nominated were Michael Haneke for Amour, Ben Zeitlin for Beast of the Southern Wild, Ang Lee for Life of Pi, Steven Spielberg for Lincoln, and David O. Russell for Silver Linings Playbook. I picked David O. Russell. It's really between him and Spielberg, I think, and I just picked O. Russell because Silver Linings Playbook is an actor's film. Best director tends to go to the actor's movie, like with King's Speech, when that won over Social Network, when everyone thought David Lynch was going to win. But I went with David O. Russell. Honestly, this one's really tough to pick. This would be the first time, if Argo wins, or if Zero Dark 30 wins, or if Les Mis wins, this would be the first time since about 1939 that the Best Picture, the director for the Best Picture wasn't even nominated. So it's quite a weird year. But who do you think is going to win this category?
Spielberg.
I wouldn't be surprised.
That movie was everything about Lincoln was so well done, and thank God it had nothing to do with vampires.
Oh, you didn't stay for the secret scene at the end?
Ha ha ha. Up next, we've got documentary feature. We've got 5 Broken Cameras, The Gatekeepers, How to Survive a Plague, The Invisible War, I don't know how anybody's fighting that, and Searching for Sugar Man. Thoughts?
I did a classic process of elimination. A lot of people are picking Searching for Sugar Man. It's a story about this singer who basically has had a really lackluster career, but then he ends up actually becoming really famous in South Africa, and it's this huge story about it. I didn't want to give too much away, but I don't see that winning because Best Documentary tends to be a cause or political film. 5 Broken Cameras and The Gatekeepers are both about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, so I kind of think they'll cancel each other out. The Invisible War is directed by Kirby Dick, who did This Film Is Not Yet Rated. I think that movie kind of still didn't set well with a lot of those in the Academy, because a lot of them may be part of the MPAA. So I went with How to Survive a Plague, and no, it's not about zombies. It's about the AIDS crisis during the 80s and 90s. So I think it's a cause movie. It's also really good. So that's the one I picked.
All right. What's next? Documentary
short. If you're an Oscar pool, it's all about picking the short films, and usually it's just a random race. Those that were nominated this year were Ensanté, King's Point, Mondays at Rishon, Open Heart, and Redemption. Honestly, I kind of just looked through the synopsis of all the films. I picked Open Heart because it's about Rwanda children having open heart surgery, having to leave their homes. So I'm thinking that they're just going to vote for it because they feel too bad not to.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Yeah, I don't watch documentaries. All right, so film editing. We've got William Goldenberg for Argo, Tim Squires for Life of Pi, Michael Kahn for Lincoln. Hey, we don't want to incur his wrath. Come on.
I'm sorry I laughed.
Jay Cassidy and Crispin Struthers for Soul Linings Playbook, and Dylan Tichenor and William Goldenberg for Zero Dark 30. For editing, I don't know, man. I would almost say Zero Dark 30 would be my pick. What about you?
I went with Argo. Argo's strength is with its directing and with its editing. So that's why I went with Argo. The opening is a perfect example of that, and I think it's going to win Best Picture. So if it's going to win Best Picture, it's going to win some other awards. So a likely candidate would be film editing.
Mm-hmm. What's next?
Next up is foreign language. This year we have Amour, Kon-Tiki, No, A Royal Affair, and War Rich. This one's kind of an easy one to pick because you go with the one that's nominated for Best Picture in Amour.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can probably move on to the next one really quickly, which is
Yeah.
makeup and hairstyling. Just 3 nominees with Hitchcock, The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, and Les Mis. I picked The Hobbit because it seems to be the only one nominated that really had extensive work in the makeup category. So that's the one I picked, but possibly Les Mis could win, but it seems like the smart money is on The Hobbit.
Yeah. Going over to music original score. Score, people. The instrumental stuff. The good stuff. Sorry, it's another dig at a certain British quote-unquote singer. You've got Anna Karenina, Argo, Life of Pi, Lincoln, and Skyfall. For me, it's a tie. I don't know which to pick between John Williams and Thomas Newman for Lincoln and Skyfall. I know neither one of them might win, but those would be either one or both would be my choice to win. Out of the ones I'd like to see win.
My choice to win wasn't nominated, and that was The Master. But I think it's going to be Life of Pi. I don't see John Williams winning because there's the bad thing about the Academy is sometimes your fame works against you, and unless John Williams has like a score to beat all of his previous scores, they're probably not going to nominate him choose him from the winner. But I wouldn't be against it, but I just think it'll be Life of Pi. So I think it's the one that stood out the most to me for all those that are nominated.
Yeah. So moving on to music original song. God. Oh, my brain's gonna hurt on this one. Before My Time from Chasing Ice. Everybody Needs a Best Friend from Ted. Pi's Lullaby from Life of Pi. Skyfall from Skyfall. And Suddenly from Les Mis. Honestly, I'd probably pick Everybody Needs a Best Friend, even though I don't care for the movie Ted.
Hey,
because I refuse to care. I refuse to even pick that raspy, smoker-sounding, whiny wench that sang the Skyfall song.
I guess we listen to different versions. I don't know. But I think it's pretty clearly going to be Skyfall. Maybe Suddenly, because that song was pretty much just made to get an Oscar nomination. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be Adele and Skyfall. Though, Seth MacFarlane is hosting this year, so maybe they'll throw him a bone and give him an award as well.
That would be funny, actually. All right, production design. We have Anna Karenina. We have The Hobbit, Les Mis, Life of Pi, and Lincoln. Production design. Thoughts? Choice?
I want Anna Karenina just because that movie was made by its production design. It really did some innovative things. It kind of combined this stage presence with the classic film of the period piece. So I think that is kind of going to play in its favor. If there's going to be another film, it'd probably be Life of Pi, but I chose Anna Karenina.
I would probably have to choose The Hobbit. And again, I haven't seen the movie, but I'm just saying, just from what I've seen from Peter Jackson and his team and all that stuff, I would probably have to choose that, because that, even though I don't care for those franchises, that has some pretty cool costumes and well, not costumes, it has some pretty cool production features. Short film animated, you have Adam and Dog, Fresh Guacamole. I'll put strychnine in the guacamole. Excuse me, sir. This too much salt in the margarita. Sorry, bad Office Space joke.
There's no such thing as a bad Office Space joke.
That's true. Head Over Heels. Maggie Simpson in The Longest Daycare. When did that happen?
Earlier this year. It's actually available online in a lot of places.
I'm gonna have to see that, because I totally missed that. And Paperman. I saw Paperman. I like Paperman. Paperman would be my choice.
Yeah, Paperman was great. The only reason I don't think it's going to win is they don't tend to vote for the more the films that really have a higher the more famous films. It usually goes to the smaller ones. So I said Adam and Dog, but I as well love Paperman. And Maggie Simpson in The Longest Daycare is actually probably one of the best things that Simpsons has done in a long time. So check it out. It's available for free and online pretty much. I think it's on YouTube too, so it's quite good.
Cool. All right, so what's next?
Another short film live action, and like we mentioned, short films, it's really anyone's ball game. The ones that are nominated are Assad, Whisky Boys, Curfew, Death of a Shadow, and Henry. I went with Curfew because it won a bunch of festival this year. It won the International Short Film Festival. So really, that's the only evidence I had. I haven't seen any of these films. So honestly, it's throw a dart on the board, but I chose Curfew.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of them, so I'm not even going to choose. Going on to sound editing, we've got Argo, Django Unchained, Life of Pi, Skyfall, and Zero Dark 30. For me, it would probably be a toss-up between Skyfall and Zero Dark 30.
Yeah, I picked Skyfall, but I agree it's really between those two, maybe even Life of Pi. But I think Skyfall because it's really the most action-oriented. This category tends to go to those type of films. It had some really great sound design or sound editing, so
Yeah.
but that's the one I went with.
And for sound mixing, we have Argo, Les Mis, Life of Pi, Lincoln, and Skyfall. See, these are the categories that just I don't know. I gotta pick Skyfall. The sound effects, the music, everything about Skyfall except for its theme song was amazing.
I went with Les Mis. The main reason being the big thing Les Mis did this year was it did live singing on set and it mixed it with orchestra in post production. I think that's gonna kind of play into the Academy's hands. So they're gonna like that type of willingness to have these singers do these live performances on a film. So that's why I went with Les Mis.
What's next?
Visual effects. Usually the one area in which genre films are actually take center stage. This year, those nominated are The Hobbit, Life of Pi, Marvel's The Avengers, Prometheus, and Snow White and the Huntsman. I went with Life of Pi. It's to me the best. It's the only one in this category that has nominations in cinematography and production design, and that's a very CGI heavy film. So for it to get those nominees along with visual effects, to me, just cues me into that's going to take away this award. But
Avengers.
Next up, we have writing for adapted screenplay. Those nominated this year are Argo, Beast of the Southern Wild, Life of Pi, Lincoln, and Silver Linings Playbook. I went with Lincoln. Argo did just win the WGAs on Sunday, but I think it's going to be Lincoln because of Tony Kershner's script. It's one of the strongest parts of that film. So I taking Lincoln on this one.
I also take Lincoln on that one. And finally, the last category, at least on this Lincoln website, writing original screenplay. Amor, written by Michael Haneke. Haneke, whatever. Henke is a form of Japanese transformer. Django Unchained, Quentin Tarantino. Flight, John Gatton's. Moonrise Kingdom, written by Wes Anderson and Roman Coppola. Wow. And Zero Dark 30 by Mark Boal, or Ball, I don't know.
No, you got it right. Mark Boal.
Boal, okay. I don't know. I honestly think it's probably a three-way race between Django, Flight, and Zero Dark 30.
I picked Zero Dark 30. It could possibly be Django. That's really, really well-written script. I just picked Zero Dark 30. I know I'm going to contradict what I just said with adapted screenplay, but it won the WGAs. Typically, the WGAs gets one of them right. I think the next contender would be Django Unchained, though the Academy, I don't think they're big Tarantino fans. Yes, they nominate him, but they're hesitant to award him because I think they're afraid of what he'll say on stage. And his script was very laden with racial slurs, and I think that will kind of rub a lot of the Academy the wrong way. So I went with Zero Dark 30.
Yeah. Alrighty then. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with some final thoughts, and we'll close out the show then. We'll be back after this.
Are you looking for a weekly dose of gaming news and retro? And check out Off the Cuff, available Fridays on Geekcast Radio Network from the producers of XRG. New name, same.
So let's say you're looking for a podcast of your favorite 80s comic books, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Ninja Turtles, He-Man, etc. Where are you going to go to find us?
Welcome to Star Joe's Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan.
And I'm Chuck. That's right, everybody. We're the Star Joes. We host a podcast called Star Joe's Podcast, where we talk about your favorite comic books, your favorite toys of all the 80s properties.
Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Mask, Thundercats, Voltron, you name it, we cover it. If it's in the 80s, we'll cover it at some point.
Yes, so what you want to do to find us, you can go to iTunes, you can go to www.starjoes.com.
And remember, the Force will be with you.
Because knowing us is half the battle.
Hey, I'm Gary.
I'm Mike.
I'm Chuck.
And I'm Justin. Join the four of us every week on the internet's #1 and longest-running G.I. Joe podcast, What's on Joe Mind?
It's Joe news, reviews, and interviews like you've never heard them before, delivered right to your MP3 player.
Our guests include Jason Marsden, Kevin Michael Richardson, and Matt Yang King from G.I. Joe Renegades, Larry Hama, Robert Atkins, and John Barber from IDW Publishing, and many more from around the online Joe community.
Yeah, it's guys talking about Joe. Think of it as Joe Talk meets sports talk. And we make fun of Chuck.
Right, and hey, again?
Come on, Chuck. We're just kidding, kinda.
Sometimes Chuck makes fun of himself.
Right, and okay, seriously, this is just getting ridiculous now.
It's What's on Joe Mind, every week on the Geekcast Radio Network, InsidePulse.com, Stitcher Smart Radio, and iTunes. Download and listen today.
I suppose I still can't say something about Transformers, can I?
Come
Good.
on, man.
No.
What about sports?
That sounds good.
Yeah, that's all right.
The Oscars, live Oscar Sunday, February 24th on ABC.
So we are back here on Movie Week in Review. In recap, just to summarize my thoughts on the whole process of specifically the Oscars award show, it's a new generation. We need new generation people as voters. You know, you see, okay, granted, last year, I would say 2011 and 2012 were the year of, hey, returning stars. You know, you've got Arnold Schwarzenegger everywhere. You got Stallone everywhere. You got all these classic stars everywhere. Before that, it was, hey, here's all these new people. Hey, here's Taylor Lautner. Hey, here's Kristen Stewart. Hey, have werewolves with your vampires. You know, it was all this stuff of all these unknowns popping up. That's what the Academy needs to do, is start, you know, they can keep all their main voters, like actors and actresses that are already there, but as far as like the main people that make the actual decisions, that actually watch these films, they need to get people under the age of 50. More people under the age of 50, please.
Well, it'll help when, you know, you have a girl who was 6 years old that got nominated this year, so that'll kind of lower their medium age a little bit. That's one thing we didn't mention, that we have the youngest person ever nominated for Best Actress and the oldest ever nominated. So, but I completely agree regarding that. They need to diversify the people in the Academy. It's there's no excuse for it, especially this day and age, that it would be that heavy on one side. And regarding the Oscars as a whole, yeah, they don't always get it right. They get it probably wrong more often than right. And I'll actually be putting out some posts this year of the top actors and actresses that never won. We have a few Oscar-related posts out. Kevin also did an Oscar-related post of the best Oscar classes of our generation, and I did one of all time. And just, you know, if you're personally, while I don't know, I enjoy this time of year. Kind of get an Oscar fever, even and I can't get enough of reading about Oscars and things of that nature. So if you're like me, you check out the site because there are a lot of great posts to read. All of my predictions will also be listed. as well. So if we're listening to this and we're curious to go back, they are listed on the site. But this year I'm really excited, honestly. I'm typically not. Only reason I'm ever excited for the Oscar pool is because I'm hoping that I win with my friends. But this year I'm actually kind of excited because I really don't. I think we might get some surprises. It's been a very long time since that's happened. So, yeah, it should be for a very strong 2012 for film, led to a very strong year for the Oscars. So 2013 has a lot to live up to.
Yes, that is so right. I want to talk about your poster a little bit. I'm actually looking at it now. How the hell has John Turturro, never been nominated for an Oscar?
It is kind of bullshit. To be honest with you, it is kind of garbage because he's given so many great performances, and he's not the only one. I mean, Steve Buscemi. I mean, there's a lot of great people who are never even nominated. That it's really kind of a shame.
Oh my god, I so have the intro clip I'm using at the beginning of the podcast now. Oh my god. Thank you, Steve Buscemi. Thank you so much. It has to do with McDonald's and asteroids from 1998. Okay. Kirk Douglas. He's been nominated 3 times but has never won. I just don't get that. Tom Cruise, I can kind of almost understand why he's never won, but he's done a lot of really great films. He's also done a lot of crappy films, too.
Yeah, I mean, he's had an up and down career, but I think he's given a lot of performances, like in Rain Man. I think people underestimate like how hard that performance was to play that straight man. Born to the 4th of July, Magnolia, even Collateral, like that. I mean, that is an example of a genre film not getting the recognition, because that performance is fantastic that he gave, but I think it didn't get the people didn't kind of look down upon it because it was just this crime thriller, but it was much more than that. But yeah,
how dare they not give an Oscar to Commissioner Gordon? What the hell?
Yeah,
Gary
Oldman. What's even more surprising that they didn't give him one is that last year was his first time ever nominated, which is crazy because he's a quintessential character actor of the last 20, maybe even 30 years, and yet he's only garnered 1 nomination, and that's kind of crazy to me.
I think the only reason why, and this is kind of going back to what you said earlier about Quentin Tarantino, the only reason why Dr. Peter Venkman has never been nominated has never won. He's been nominated once, but the only reason why Bill Murray has never won is because of they have no idea what he'll say on stage. That's the only reason.
Yeah, yet they will put James Franco and let him host. So that's kind of that's
true.
Yeah, that to me. I if you go back to our winter preview way back in last year, we talked about Hyde Park and Hudson, and we thought he'd get nominated this year. He's playing FDR, but that didn't happen. I think mainly because that movie wasn't very good. He was great in it, but the movie wasn't very good. But yeah, I love Bill Murray. I don't know anyone who doesn't love Bill Murray, and he's never won an Oscar. He's only been nominated for Lost in Translation. Kind of shows you, like you were saying, like genre films or comedy or certain actors, just for some reason they're not in the Academy's wheelhouse, so they don't get their recognition.
Yeah. All right, so that's going to do it for us here in the Oscars this year. And this was more so, the reason why Dan and I had done this episode, it wasn't so we could really comment it on. Originally, it was because he had mentioned to me, hey, do you want to rant about the Oscar nominations? I'm like, sure. And then we kind of turned it into a historical thing. I don't know if we're going to do Oscars next year. I think next year we might just wait and do a reaction show. Like this year we did our predictions and whatever else, and next year I think we should just, you can do your blog predictions and stuff, and we should just record a show after the ceremony, which means I have to watch the Oscars next year. Holy crap.
You can just watch their Twitter feed. They put all the answers.
Yeah. I think next year we'll do a reactionary show. As far as like, I'm betting I would get more ranting done from a reaction show next year.
Yeah, I'm sure. I can only imagine the amount of ranting if you won't watch this year that's going to be going on. When Frankenweenie ends up winning for Best Animated Film.
Never! To hell with Tim Burton. Him and his Alice in Wonderland ripoffs. Alright, so we hope you enjoyed this episode of MWire. I wish you'll join us next time when we'll be continuing on with the 90s flashback with episode 94, Speed. For now, I am TFG and Mike with
Movie Revolt Dan.
Thank you for listening, and remember to keep those film reels rolling.
I didn't see that one, huh?
Hi, I'm Seth MacFarlane, and I'll be your host this year for the Oscars. So tweet about it now. Oh, that's not how you spell douche.
You've just listened to Movie Week in Review on GeekCastRadio.com. If you would like to leave feedback on the show, there are many ways to do so. First, you can visit the website, GeekCastRadio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. Be sure to rate our show on iTunes and leave us feedback. You can follow us on Twitter at GCRN Become a fan of us on Facebook by searching Geekcast Radio Network. You can email us at feedback@geekcastradio.com. Call the voicemail line 502-526-5821. Please remember to tell us the show you're leaving the message for and your name. So until next time, unleash the geek in you.
In a world, there, I said it, happy,